Berlin is not just the capital of Germany, it is a city that has literally lived through several different worlds. It has witnessed medieval marketplaces, empires, world wars, the collapse of civilizations, division by a concrete wall, and its own rebirth from ruins. Today, Berlin looks like a modern European metropolis. Neon lights, glass skyscrapers, technology, music, art, and freedom. But beneath its streets lies hundreds of years of history. The history of a city that was destroyed many times and rose again every single time. This is the story of Berlin. Part 1. The birth of Berlin. Thousands of years ago, there were no skyscrapers, no subway, and no huge avenues here. The territory of modern-day Berlin consisted of dense forests, swamps, rivers, and small settlements of Slavic tribes. The main artery of the region was the River Spree. It connected trade routes between Eastern and Western Europe. Thanks to this river, the first trading posts gradually began to appear here. In the 12th century, German princes began actively expanding their territories eastward. On the site of future Berlin, two small settlements emerged, Berlin and Cologne. Yes, Cologne, but not the large Cologne located in Western Germany. This was a small town on an island in the middle of the Spree. Over time, the two settlements began to grow and merge together. This marked the beginning of the city that would later become one of the most important cities in Europe. The first official mention of Berlin dates back to around the 13th century. The city developed rapidly thanks to trade. Walking through its streets were merchants, craftsmen, fishermen, travelers. The market sold furs, grain, timber, fabrics, metal. Berlin was gradually becoming an important trading center of the Brandenburg region. But at that time, nobody could have imagined how enormous the city would become. Medieval Berlin looked completely different. Narrow, dirty streets, wooden houses, smoke from stoves, church bells ringing, the constant smell of markets and animals. Life was hard. Fires, diseases, and wars regularly destroyed parts of the city, but Berlin continued to grow. Part 2. Prussia and the Industrial Revolution. The real turning point came in the 17th and 18th centuries. Berlin became the capital of Prussia. Prussia was a state that was rapidly transforming into a major military and political power in Europe. And alongside that, Berlin was growing as well. Kings and rulers began rebuilding the city. Palaces were constructed, wide streets, public squares, administrative buildings. The first signs of what would later become the Imperial Berlin began to appear. The city changed especially dramatically under Frederick the Great. Berlin became a cultural center, a military center, a scientific center. People came here from across Europe, philosophers, engineers, musicians, architects. The city was gradually turning into the heart of Prussia. The 19th century changed Berlin forever. The industrial era had begun. The city saw the construction of factories, railways, bridges, industrial plants. The population was growing at an incredible speed. People moved to Berlin in massive numbers in search of work. The streets filled with workers, horse-drawn carriages, smoke, the noise of machines, electric lights. Berlin became one of the fastest-growing cities in Europe. In 1871, Germany was unified, and Berlin became the capital of the German Empire. Berlin was becoming the symbol of a new Germany. Chapter 3. The Golden Twenties and the Fall of Berlin. The 1920s went down in history as the Golden Twenties. After World War I, Germany found itself in a devastating crisis. The country had lost the war. The economy was collapsing, and people were losing jobs and money. But at the same time, Berlin unexpectedly became one of the freest, brightest, and most modern cities in the world. Berlin was bursting with life. Every evening, the city lit up with energy. Jazz clubs were opening everywhere. Theaters were packed. New forms of cinema were emerging. Artists and musicians were experimenting with art, and the nightlife continued until morning. Creative people from all across Europe came here. Berlin became a symbol of freedom, bold ideas, and a new culture. Jazz filled the streets. Revolutionary films played in movie theaters. In cafes and bars, people discussed politics, art, and the future of the world. It seemed as if the city was entering a completely new era, but behind this bright facade, serious problems were growing. Germany's economy remained unstable. Inflation reached unbelievable levels. Money lost its value so quickly that people carried entire stacks of banknotes just to buy a loaf of bread. Sometimes prices changed several times in a single day. The political situation was also becoming more dangerous. Clashes between political groups erupted in the streets. Society was becoming deeply divided. Many people felt fear and uncertainty about the future. And in this atmosphere, radical forces gradually began to rise. In 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power. Berlin became the capital of Nazi Germany. The city was reshaped to reflect the vision of a massive empire. Huge parades filled the streets, Nazi symbols appeared everywhere, and the government tightened its control over everyday life. But soon, Europe was plunged into World War II. As the war began, Berlin became one of the main centers of the Nazi state, and at the same time, one of the primary targets of the Allies. Year after year, the bombings grew more destructive. Air raid sirens sounded almost constantly. People hid in subway tunnels and bomb shelters. Entire neighborhoods disappeared under fire and smoke. By the end of the war, Berlin was almost completely destroyed. The streets had turned into ruins. Thousands of buildings were destroyed. Millions of people were left without homes, food, or a normal life. In the spring of 1945, the Battle of Berlin began, one of the most brutal and bloody battles of World War II. The Soviet army attacked the city from all sides. Fighting took place for nearly every street and every building. When the war finally ended, enormous ruins were all that remained of the once great Berlin. It seemed as though the city would never recover again. But even more extraordinary events still awaited Berlin. The division of the city, the Berlin Wall, and the confrontation between two worlds. Chapter 4. The Berlin Wall and the City of Two Worlds. After World War II, Germany was divided. Berlin was divided too, even though the city itself was located deep inside East Germany. The eastern part was controlled by the Soviet Union. The western part was controlled by the United States, Great Britain, and France. As a result, one city became split between two completely different systems. Very quickly, Berlin turned into the main symbol of the Cold War. In the West, bright signs, advertising, Western music, cinema, capitalism, and a sense of freedom. In the East, strict control, restrictions, the socialist system, and constant pressure from the government. The border between these two worlds literally ran through streets and buildings. Year after year, more and more people from East Berlin tried to escape to the western side, and eventually the authorities decided to completely seal the border. In 1961, the construction of the Berlin Wall began. At first, it was just fences and barbed wire, but very quickly a massive concrete wall split the city apart. It divided streets, subway stations, neighborhoods, families, and people's lives. Berlin became a city living under constant tension. The wall turned into one of the most famous symbols of the 20th century. For almost 30 years, it separated not only the city, but the entire world into two opposing sides. But by the late 1980s, things began to change. The socialist system in Eastern Europe was weakening, and protests and public unrest were growing across the region. Then, in November 1989, a historic event took place. The Berlin Wall fell. Strangers hugged each other, cried, and celebrated together. Images of people breaking apart the concrete wall with hammers spread all around the world. After decades of division, Berlin became one city again. It became a symbol of the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new era for Germany and all of Europe. Chapter 5. Berlin. Today, the city that survived everything. Today, Berlin is one of the most unusual cities in Europe. It's a place where the past and the future literally stand side by side. Here you can see 19th century buildings, modern glass skyscrapers, remains of the Berlin Wall, and former factories transformed into art spaces and clubs. Berlin is constantly changing, yet it never tries to hide its past. The traces of history are everywhere. You can still find buildings marked by the scars of war. Many places continue to remind people of the city's division and the dramatic events of the 20th century. But that is exactly what made Berlin so unique. After all the destruction and crises, the city managed to reinvent itself once again. Today, Berlin is considered one of the world's capitals of modern art, technology, startups, electronic music, and contemporary culture. Millions of tourists, artists, musicians, and entrepreneurs come here from all over the world. Berlin has become a symbol of freedom, creativity, and constant transformation. The history of Berlin is a story of destruction and recovery. The city survived wars, dictatorship, division, and countless crises. Many cities would never have recovered after so much devastation, but Berlin did. And maybe that's exactly why the city feels so alive today. Because very few cities in the world have changed their destiny so many times and managed to rebuild themselves again and again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And write in the comments, which city should we explore next?